Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Shelley, sorry.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Trish McFarland. I'm president of the Delaware County Chamber of Commerce, and we are thrilled to have you all here with us this afternoon. Hybrid model. I know this is top of conversation for so many of us since the pandemic, and we have an amazing panel and moderator with us. This afternoon is sponsored by Comcast, and I want to thank Kira for all of her work on this, and Jess, thank you for pulling this all together. I'd like to introduce Luke, who is director of marketing, right, at Comcast.
Yeah, still.
He's going to be our moderator. Yes. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for everybody joining. Happy to be here today, and I think with Kira, Jess, Trish, we all talk about this. As organic as this conversation probably comes up every single day, please, part of this moderating the experts on the panel with me, what I would suggest is just, open discussion, right? I think whatever industry you're in, what interests you have in this topic, I think, it can evolve and continue to evolve. So please, we'll have a time for Q&A. I've got a few questions to kind of start us off, but I'm going to pass it over to my panelists for some introductions.
My name is Christine Beck, and I am the Chief Personal Officer of the County of Delaware. And I actually just started there on Monday. So I'm just learning all about their hybrid schedule. But before that, I was the Executive Director for Human Resources at the Philadelphia College of Medicine. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Margot Goodson. I'm Vice President, Headroom, American Diversity Inclusion at State Bates. I've actually been there for 16 years, but CPA Six Sigma Green Belt has been my background. Turned certified diversity executive. So I've been in this space since 2018, and I'm on a quest to make D&I and DNA at SAP. I'm super excited about the topic today because it does transcend people into our processes and programs and things like this. So work-life styles and integration, etc. And so happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
I am Greg Teal. A little bit different take on things. I went to school to be an electrical engineer. I designed microchips for a few years. My big claim to fame is I worked for the company that made the BlackBerry. I was one of their product engineers, which was a pretty cool company. It was probably the coolest job I ever had, according to myself. I moved to Pennsylvania, worked for a high-tech company in Prussia. We developed 4G LTE. Probably you've heard of that before, but 19 years ago, I left engineering and started working with my father-in-law as a financial advisor. Got a master's of science and financial services, and then we started buying businesses. And over the years, my wife and I have bought 9 businesses. Sounds like a really big problem, and it is someday, but they really fall into 3 different categories. We own a toy company, we own a financial advisory firm, and we own a co-working space. So I'm the owner of Headroom now, and we are now at 4 locations. We have Aston, 2 in Media, and 1 in Wayne, and we're working on Mountain Town, Westchester right now. What we're doing is we're marrying the old Headroom model, where they had private offices and offices by the hour, and dedicated private offices to it. We've been seeing big success with it. So, we're currently at 87 offices across Delaware. We're opening up another 13 in Wayne. I think the 1st of April they tell me, but it should be by the 1st of April.
I appreciate the intros, and Craig, I know I've got some questions. I'm sure we all do around co-working. So we'll definitely come back. Christine, and if you could, for all of you, I think one way to kind of kick this off is I know we've been constantly talking about the pandemic, and now this after pandemic, where this topic has transcended. But if you've got, and I know it's day 2, so I did promise I'd be easy. Why don't we take us through maybe some of the policy that set in? Did your business, did your county shut down? But did your prior business shut down for a certain amount of time? And then, what policies have morphed out of that are still
Well, with the county, like you said, I haven't been there that long, but they couldn't shut down. This county business. Some of those offices had to stay open the whole time. There were some people who were there all 5 days all throughout the pandemic, and I think they got a little bit burnt out. And I think some places where offices or departments had to stay open, you saw that as well. So I'm feeling a little bit of that as I come in. They are in a hybrid schedule now. So they can, and it's a little bit flexible, but they can do 2 days remote and 3 days in the office. So, and there are certain positions in certain areas where they don't have any hybrid, they have to be 100% in. So, part of the county is Fair Acres, which is a nursing facility. So, obviously they have to be there. So it's in flux because it's different depending on where you work. So it's bad in one respect because you can't have a blanket policy across the board. You have to kind of go by the line of business and what's right for each piece of that. So that is something that we're looking at now to see how that's going to continue. But I think everybody agrees that hybrid is going to go here to stay in the areas that it can be. I think if you don't have that, you're going to lose your employees because they're going to find that flexibility someplace else. A little different story at the college because they completely shut down over the pandemic. The campus itself was shut. You weren't allowed to be there unless you were considered an emergency employee. You need a specific list of people who were allowed to be there. Of course, HR had to be there, so I was on that list. But they in certain areas had to be there. But other than that, everybody was home. Even people who really couldn't do their job, they weren't allowed to come to work. And so we found alternative work. They continued to be paid. But that was an interesting time as well. And then that was a very long time period that we were closed. And then opened back up, shut back down for the holidays. So it was funny, but they're open again in kind of the same situation where it's hybrid. They want you in on campus 3 days a week, they do remote too. Certain areas have to be there all 5 days. And then there's certain areas like IT where certain divisions of that, like the programmers, they can be 100% remote. So it's a little bit easier. But I think it's an interesting time. We have to keep on top of what's going on.
Appreciate it. I've got a follow-up, but I would love to hear from Margo. When you think about SAP and you've been there for 16 years, it's an incredible tenure. You've seen a lot there, obviously transition. Obviously, the first pandemic, what was the challenge or change that you went through at SAP, in regards to hiring too, and your initiatives with DE&I? I'd love to know how that has transcended. But first, obviously, what did SAP go through on that, policies were like that?
So being a technology company, I guess we were already hybrid, we didn't call it that.
Yeah.
So from 2016 to 2018, I worked 100% from home. That was pre-pandemic, but it was because the team that reported to me was in Vancouver, British Columbia, and Dublin, Ireland. And my boss was in Dublin, California, and her boss was in Germany, right? And we had Salesforce Salesforce members that were never in the office, but always on site at customers. So the biggest change was now, instead of just certain colleagues being remote and or hybrid, everybody was home. And it went from people not being available to always being available. So the schedules became crazy because now you were back-to-back meetings all day, every day without a break, unless you forced it in yourself, because it was no more just I'm working from home and I'm waiting for so-and-so to get off the road. He's also at home. And so everybody, clogging up each other's calendars. So we did completely shut down from an office perspective, and then likewise, so did our customers and partners. So you weren't traveling, nothing was happening. Prior to the pandemic, we were already doing more of what we call flex work, and it's your work your way. And some managers were struggling with that idea, particularly in our development teams and product teams, things like that. And then they had to do it right away. So everybody pivoted, Friday shut down, Monday, everybody's doing it. The policy coming out of it has been, okay, remember we tried to tell you beforehand, you've now survived, and now we're going to do it. And we don't mandate any particular number of days. It's been the offices are open. Depending on your work team, determines where you need to be. I was in the office today prior to coming here simply because this is 15-20 minutes from the office and it's an hour from where I live. So it didn't make sense to me to work from home today to try to get here in case of the traffic I can't. But I'm not mandated to be here in the office any particular number of days. The teams that do have somewhat of a come in the office, it's not a set day. It's more so how many days work for you to be where, come in, and then if there are team meetings on a particular day, then they'll say, okay, this week can you all be in on a certain day. How that impacted some of the hiring is we actually could hire more inclusively, Headroom North America, D&I, 25,000 people in US together, more inclusively because now you have to be tied to that location. You might post a position from a particular geographical location, but you could essentially work from anywhere. So someone was hired in Toronto to work for a team who was based in Atlanta because they had that flexibility, right?
Never would have got that candidate.
Exactly. So that helped us tremendously. Some of our partners that we work with for sourcing purposes previously had a challenge of where geographically their base was. Our SAP returnship program, hiring launchers who are coming back to the workforce after the break, now open that up, right? So it has definitely enabled us to be more inclusive when it comes to workforce demographics. It has helped us to be more strategic when it comes to the type of talent we want. It has enabled us to be even more intersectional when you talk about gender, generational, ethnicity, veteran status, plus, because it has opened up those horizons. We are not concerned about necessarily your location. We say work, your way, your work, your way, your location, your time frame. For me, I may work from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. and run my daughter to dance and pick up my son from here, and then get back on at 8 o'clock at night for a couple hours, right? And that's okay because we're all getting the work done. Even a global company, we're already around the clock, depending on what your role is. So I remember years ago, I had to go to bed and get up at 2 a.m. to run a session and sit there. So we try to keep that sort of thing where if you're getting your work done, that we can have that flexibility. If you're on a team that's time sensitive, then understand that within the parameters of that work and get that work completed. But our policy literally does state your work, your way. And it depends on your role, your location, your deadlines as to what determines the percentage of work to be in person versus remote. We make sure that you still have access to opportunities.
I love that your work, your way. And I think, in our world, we've seen the same when it comes to hiring, when it came to applicant experience, right? Being able to interact with people that we never would have had walked through the door interview before. And it's led to a better policing environment. I do have a follow-up for both, and Greg, I promise I did. You talked in your own way about productivity, but burnout, and you mentioned it in a different word. Christine, if you could, how has the county or maybe the university too, how is that addressed in, in this workspace? I know we all do it. Reachable 24/7 sometimes. Sorry, Kira, I know reachable 24/7 sometimes, but I think that work from home, that pressure that you put on yourself, love to learn a little bit, how the county is addressed burnout and keeping employees. And then
with the county, I don't have enough information on that one, so I don't have the connection to answer that. But at the school, and I think I mentioned there were some people who had to be there all throughout. I'll give you a prime example, maintenance. There's nobody there, so we didn't need maintenance, but you need the HVAC and the boiler room guys. So they were there, but everybody else was off. So at a certain point, they were doing everything, getting burnt out. So we ended up rotating and bringing the other maintenance guys in and kind of spreading it out a little bit. I think everybody thought it was going to be quick, or at least they were so fantastic, but it wasn't. So, and for some of those people who really put in extra work during that time, we gave bonuses, and that's the school. So we were able to do that and identify people who put in extra work and get them for that. And then at the county, like I said, I just learned.
I promise I'd be easy. Margo, same question for you.
For us, lots of flexibility and lots of virtual events. We had virtual concerts, chocolate tasting parties, wine tasting parties. You saw people on a video call walking on the treadmill during the meeting, right? And so we really made sure that as long as the work was getting done, we could ensure your mental stability. and we encouraged 20, 25-minute meetings so that you had a 5-minute break or 10-minute break. We encouraged 45 minutes to build in 15 minutes so that it wasn't this nonstop marathon. We encouraged leveraging our employee network groups to offset some of the engagement out the day, that everything wasn't a core business meeting. We encouraged customer, virtual type events where you could engage. We had an event where it was myself, the DE guys here from the San Francisco 49ers, and a couple of our industry folks on an event, totally work-related, virtual, chocolate shipped to your house. We talked about the very types of teams of chocolate and the various ways of thinking about the goods for the future. And so little things like that made a difference, but just daily things like leveraging our employee resources, the services, and our offices actually were always open to your point. There was people who had to be there to keep the data center going and to keep the, so there were people who came in the office every now and then. They'd have special permission and use the gym equipment, use the, just to break it up. We had colleagues that we recognized lived alone in apartments, and psychological safety was key. And they really struggled with that isolation. So we encouraged them, hey, get together, 1 or 2 people, we send out masks for safety, shipped out all over the globe, so that you could still live. If you're gonna walk your dog, hey, here's our connection team that you can help see who's in your neighborhood that maybe you didn't connect with before. Which is our employee network groups, which many people might call resource groups, etc., that you could, be part of with. So there was a lot of ongoing intentional engagement and outreach to our employees to let them know what resources were available, what flexibility was there. We recognized that, hey, just like we had to pivot from a business perspective, that we needed employees to have that flexibility. So we helped Haynes pivot from making underwear to making masks. We helped General Motors pivot from making motors, the one of my cars, to making ventilators, right? So we helped Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J move the vaccines. So likewise, we said, look, employees, you have to do the work in a way that's unprecedented. Let us help you. We had tutoring services for those kids that we saw jumping over the net in the middle of the meet, right? Like really, so how does that help you from a psychological safety perspective? And trust that you're not gonna fail, you're not necessarily failing them because you're trying to do all things at once. So there were a lot of ways that I saw us lean in that I was super proud of, because I felt like we were diversifying our methodologies to diversify our results to meet the diverse needs of our diverse workers.
Yeah, no, it's, I think they were jumping over my neck before, and now more so than ever.
But we saw it.
But we saw it, right? And I'll probably ask, what your favorite work from home story was. I don't want to tell you, but no, I appreciate that. I think that gives us a good lens into SAP and what you've seen now. And Greg, I think, as we shift a little bit, this hybrid model, this, we called it work from home, we called it hybrid, it's going to be called something else, and it's here to stay. Love to get your take on, Headroom in particular, and then give us a little bio on Headroom, co-working space. It's all boom. Love to learn, one, how Headroom has adopted or really, adapted new challenges that are facing. But talk to us a little bit about what Headroom's strategy was, especially now as we're coming post-pandemic.
During the pandemic, it was very quiet. Nobody was there. My team was there. Yeah. My accounting team was there. They were preventing me from coming to work because I was not actively doing tax returns. They tried to turn me into the county, which I greatly appreciate. But that's stories out of school. So I did building meetings. I committed to paint things. As a boss, you got to do what you got to do. But I think we were well positioned for the COVID transition. So many co-working spaces are large open spaces where you have tables and rooms with lots of different people working in different capacities, kind of a noisy environment. When I built out predecessor of Headroom, and we had Headroom 2, I built it all up private office. I work best in a closed door environment where I can shut everybody else off in the world and I get my own work done. If somebody drops a pencil beside me, I would be distracted for 10 to 15 minutes getting back to my particular task. That's how I work. So I built what I prefer. And thankfully, the pandemic fit well into that model. That people were not necessarily comfortable being in large open spaces anymore. They wanted to be in private contained spaces with people that they knew or they had more control over their interaction. So we were well suited for that transition with the pandemic. And we've continued with that. So we've been adding private offices to that. We've seen a number of people that one of our residents, that's a permanent residence, they have a private office that's 12 by 12, that's their dedicated space. It's a husband and wife who live in our community. They work for the same company and they take turns coming to the office and working from home because they felt like they were going to kill each other if they continued to work in the same space with their children, doing what they were doing. So we've seen a lot of different people using our space in different ways to make sanity for themselves. We have seen a large growth because people have been working from home. If you see the work from home environment, if you're salespeople, you can't have someone over your house or a team over your house. You need a third-party place to meet. So we have meeting spaces that accommodate boardrooms or up to 30 different people to be able to pull a team together or just a one-on-one meeting. So that, I think our facility worked out well. That's what the other co-working spaces are doing, is creating those real private spaces. Because the big spaces are not as close. I think we've all got a little bit of, no, not always. Many of us still have a little bit of germophobia. I think about who I'm interacting with, and if they're coughing or if they currently have a mask on, are they sick or are they trying to be protected from it? These are the narratives that run through my mind. And so I think we all are thinking twice about our own health and how we're interacting with others. So because not that I'm necessarily even worried about my own health, I'm worried about the people that I've interacted with. My wife had 4 90-year-olds. She had all 4 grandparents until last November. And so we were just so incredibly careful taking things to them. And so I think we all have our own considerations of what we do and who we interact. And then the third thing, so I broke it down into 3 separate items, is cleanliness. So I was just talking to Miranda, my assistant. I said, we hired somebody this week. I said, we didn't have a commitment to cleanliness. And she came up with a better term for it that she can't remember now. So we wish we had recordings of those conversations. But we have both been very, very vigilant on how clean our facilities are. And I think for all businesses, think about where you're meeting with people and what's going on. My teenagers have been teaching me teenager words. When you go in someplace and it's dirty, it's sus. Which means suspect, I think.
Yes.
So you walk into a deli and the floor is dirty. Should I be eating the sandwich here? Is that something I should be doing? Like if they're that concerned about their floor, what about their cleanliness practices behind it? That's where my mind goes. Or if their bathroom's not clean, are they paying attention to the way their business, like the details of their business? So we are committed to cleanliness now, and this new hire has been ingrained in the past 2 days that this is what's going to happen. You are responsible for the facility being clean. I think we all have to do that. I think that's today's environment.
It's funny that he mentioned that because it has we've done 2 things around that. So our global real estate facilities team really has revamped all of our offices. Like they consolidated, closed some locations. We're just not using as much space. But within the locations, particularly here in Newtown Square office, they redesigned space to do some of what you said. So before it was you'd have a hard time getting a meeting room because a lot of people were using their offices. But they broke it down like the world of cubicles and made it shared space. And then they created small offices in the middle of the floors that you don't have to sit necessarily with conference rooms. And then the cleanliness perspective, there's hand sanitizers everywhere. There's masks if you want to wear, you don't have to wear. Any room you go into, there is definitely clean. They always had a good cleaning crew. They did. Yet I feel like the things that people didn't do for years that we should have been doing, could have been doing, what we now do, right? And so I definitely see that. And I like some of the new space. I've been being here 16 years. We're like, wait, what did they do to this other stuff? Because I was used to it being what it was. But I've adapted to what I see it now. It really is fostering greater collaboration when you are in the workplace. And where we put things in that could attract you or incent you to come to office, like a prayer room and adjacent thing, right? Like different things that we already had relaxation suites, but now we have libraries and wellness rooms and things that like the gym was always there, but now we have. So all of that transformation of the space to make it more, like you said, what worked for you was the middle of the office. So now they're doing a combination of the collaboration space, the office, the walls are now writable, and things that some of it was there before, but now it's more pervasive. So designing it for what, build it and the people will come. So that's also why they don't necessarily mandate a certain number of days. We keep announcing all the transformations that we're doing in the office. Yeah, and then having events and incentives for reasons for you to come in and see that space and use it the way you like. again, back to your work your way.
Your work your way, and you talk, and this can go for all of you. Love to, and I'm sure we would as well. Love to hear maybe some of the pros that you've seen now since this hybrid is here to stay. You talked a little bit about employee engagement, virtual events, in-person events. Obviously, the space changes, co-working, it's completely evolved. But Margo, if you could continue, talk to us a little bit about some of the pros that you've seen for this remote space now in the future.
So I feel like when you're allowing people to work from home, right, that you're encouraging and supporting their needs, right? So that shows you that yes, your customers are essential, but your biggest assets are your employees. So to accommodate the employees is a big deal. When we first went into pandemic, well, literally people were getting redesigned home offices. SAP was shipping chairs and ergonomic equipment, everything. Yeah, everybody's comfortable. They need to come in the office and take what you need. That scheduled days, come take what you need and go back home. So that was important. And so people are set up for success when they choose to work from home. When they choose to come in the office, it's a beautifully designed walk-in space. It's a lot of self-service. We have a lot of food options, a lot of health and fitness options. And the benefits to that is people feel like if you're not making me do it, I want to do it. Sometimes I have the option. Versus if you're making me do it, I may not want to do it, or I may not want to do it the days that you said. So I think that flex really goes a long way. We know IT is there. If I have an issue with my phone or my laptop, I can always come in, it will be here. That's a benefit. Another thing that I found really, really nice is I was in our Chicago office and I was minding my own business and someone spotted me and I heard this shriek and I thought something was happening. But she was excited. She's one of our business witness network leaders and she was excited that the D&I person was in their office. So it was a fringe benefit to her to have him come in, to have a moment with somebody who I'm not typically in that office. She was excited to meet. Likewise, I was in our New York office and one of our board members, Thomas Somerset, was there. So I was like, oh, Thomas, and when started talking to him, introduced him to our IBM counterpart for our Working Positively initiative. So some of the positive, unexpected moments that you have engaging with people is a core benefit. It is also what helped me up to here today, but it's a core benefit that you're getting to interact spontaneously with people in a way that would not come if you were in an office. This is when you were scheduling a meeting virtually. I was in our San Francisco office. It's a new office. So they had 3 offices. They shut all 3 down. And it has space in another building. Beautiful. And we had a business women's network event there on International Women's Day, right? So you can have very unique space that you leverage for customer, partner, employee engagement, and business development opportunities if you're using your space strategically. If you're inviting your folks in with purpose, hosting a partner summit, hosting a, So I think that those are some of the benefits that you see that you give the flexibility. People will engage in a way that you might not expect them to. And then you have those chance opportunities and you show the value of being there and being remote. The opportunities you post, when you post for something in the office, you're gonna see it remotely. Don't count it a penalty that you're not in the office and show that, right? And employee network things that might happen. Most times we want it in person with a live stream so that you can consume whatever kind of way you want and you're not left out. We're not being exclusive in our training efforts, right? And I think that's a big piece. When you can show that positive benefits are there, whether you're working from home or at the office, it goes a long way. And then people are flexible and they're like, okay, I can do this either way. Don't tell me what to do, how to do it, but still within the confines and get it done. And we can, it's golden. So that flexibility, I think, is the biggest win for people. I will tell you that I've interviewed outside of it several times in the last 2 years. And every time somebody said you have to come in on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm like, no, thank you. I want to come in on Monday, Thursday, Friday. Or I want to come in on just Wednesday, right? Like what, so yeah, it goes a little bit.
Well, you talked about flexibility, and I think it's really interesting. I think we all agree. We've seen it and how companies have responded, continue to stay flexible to retain talent. I think was a big piece that Christine mentioned. Christine, what are some of the pros that you've seen from the county, from the university? I think we've got an interesting background to share with us.
Well, I do think flexibility and employee morale is definitely a pro. When you're working from home, you have a lot more flexibility. You can, I think you who had said you work earlier hours and then you're not home. We saw a lot of that, especially when we were shut down completely. People fitting the work in when they needed to fit it in, especially because the children were all at that point too. And they were going, they had to be online school, virtual school and all that. So we found, I think people maybe didn't even know what worked best for them until that point. And then they found that coming to work early and going back on later worked for them. So, that was rough. They were really able to be more productive because of that. And we found, a lot of people worked during the commute hours. Okay, between the house now to go to work, I'm just to log on. And we also found that people were constantly on these virtual meetings and video meetings, and we got tired of it all day. So we would send reminders around. I think we made Fridays a no Zoom day. So we asked everybody not to have video meetings on Fridays just to give people a break. It didn't always work. There's always an emergency, but for the most part, right. Okay, I'll talk to you about training. But sometimes you just have to turn the camera off, especially if you're on video all day long. But I think people really found what worked for them, and we're able to keep to some degree. We're not as global and can't be as flexible. And at the university as well as the county, the offices have to stay open, and they have to have specific office hours because they've got customers that are looking for them from 9 to 5. And at the university, their biggest piece was a medical school, and so there are some online medical schools, but that's not what we are. So the students had to come in and take classes once we were open again, and so we felt it was important for the professors to be there to teach them live. So we do have some where it's a class. They had 2 other campuses in Georgia, so they have one right there in Philadelphia and 2 in Georgia. So we were able to connect a lot more than we did before. They were very much separate. But now there's actual classes where it's live on one campus and be televised. Zoom, so people get flying from home and from other classrooms on other campuses. So a lot more flexibility that way. And we really actually designed the whole curriculum of the medical college to fit around it. So that was really good. And I think at the county, I'm seeing the same thing where they're outward facing. The customers are people in the county, so you have to have some kind of structure, but they are allowing to work through these. So, on the stage of being able to touch on when you work in the so I think just live in the whole world, and we're able to take pieces of that as much as we can.
No, I think I would totally agree. I think you mentioned too, and I think we all would agree, it's probably easier to grab 15 minutes or something, right? You don't have to commute. I mean, again, maybe we want to for certain people who want to get out of our house, but having that flexibility, we both mentioned, to set up this networking opportunity, like obviously we're doing this in person, but now sometimes you can do it virtually as well, which is interesting. I wouldn't have attended some events, now I'm able to attend more. That flexibility, we've taken it very seriously as well. I'm gonna shift back to Greg. I know, with co-working in particular, one question I need to ask you, I think I'd love to learn, I'm sure we would, client change. Talk to me about pre-pandemic, your clients, talk to us about now. What was that change like? Are they still the same things? Do you see a rise in certain industry clients coming into your space and others?
So it's a neat question because I try to study our customer base a whole lot because I want to replicate my customer base and the customer. So marketing, we see who your existing customers are and we market to that. It's New York, Boston. Everybody uses our space. We have so many different companies. We had a drone school using one of our facilities. They would come in after hours, take over the kitchen area in our main facility, and they'd be flying drones around the whole space and teach teenagers and adults, senior citizens. There's teenagers and senior citizens. They're the 2 people who have time to fly drones. It's just such a varied number of different industries that use it. So I don't have an industry that uses it more, but what I find is there's more, I think we're getting away from the word work from home, but there's more work from home people that need a place to grow sometimes and not get, whether there's kids home that particular day, a holiday, and there's a circus going on in your own home, or you need to meet with customers customers or you need to meet with your boss, whoever, that you're in a more contained environment, that you don't have everything. So that should be our flex membership. Like $350 a month, 50 hours of office usage. People have been signing up for that. A lot of work from home people just to be able to get away from home for a little while and be more often. Our residents really collaborate. It's a neat environment to get around other people. Typically, most of our pre-pandemic people were all entrepreneurs. They're excited to be around entrepreneurs. They care about what they're doing. Their eyes are bright. They're going to take over the world. They probably all won't, but they're going to try to take over the world. It's an exciting group of people to be around. I love being with them because it makes me want to do business better. That's what I think the benefit of our membership prior to the pandemic. Now we have more people that need a space. So it's become even more difficult to find who our target customer is if I'm doing Facebook marketing or LinkedIn marketing or things like that, because it's more diverse. But it's not a bad thing. It's something that has been great, and we've had a lot of demand for private offices. So we've been expanding that out. We added to media another location, and that's why we're adding private offices. So people can have a 24/7 dedicated space that's their place to help them. So
It's interesting because you and I connected on that. We spoke about some of our outside business development team members who are now permanently remote versus having a dedicated location. We've seen them, purchase their own hours on their time. They just needed to get out of their home office, right? They needed to get with a client or meet with their leader as they're visiting certain accounts in the territory. And it's interesting to see that.
we have one IT company that contracted with our services because they do a lot of data recovery. And they were now work from home, and they were having people ship laptops to their home for data recovery. And someone said to them, wait a minute, this is someone's house I'm shipping this to. So they use us as a business address to legitimize what they're doing. That it's not just Mo Schmo's house.
Can't have 150 laptops sitting on my doorstep. Question. No, it makes sense.
But when a laptop comes in, we call them and they come and recover it from us to do their operations. So it's just very interesting.
Second question, and we're going to keep going. And then obviously the same question for all of you. How has technology played with this? And obviously we saw an evolution overnight that would have taken about 10 years in certain industries. But love to learn, in your respective space, where does technology fit, today?
So we had just really opened our location for the pandemic happened. So I had everything brand new. It was so nice. I didn't miss a beat. We just I'll talk about our financial planning firm. So we have everything all VoIP now, which is somewhat different for a small business. We don't all have VoIP systems. So I was able to send people home, at least during the initial 2 weeks, with their cell phones to make that happen. So we didn't really miss anything on that. Now all the residents have all the access to the VoIP stuff also. But it just allowed us to be more fluid because we had brand new technology, which companies don't always have. We lend that to our residents. So it's something that I think that companies are in, but big companies, county, they're able to afford new technology. Small businesses don't always have cutting edge. We're sometimes behind the time because we're thinking about how we're going to educate our kids and how we're going to feed everybody. And I got payroll over here, and oh no, pandemic. How am I going to pay everybody? That was when that account's coming out of something that has your name on it. It needs to be. So that investment was difficult to make. So thankfully we were well positioned.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I thought it was supposed to be.
Yeah, Lou, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Audience? Yeah.
I've seen a few, so yeah, jump in.
my mind, but going around, listening to everybody here, and a couple of things come to mind, and that is because of as a pivot from pandemic, we've all had this camera at the top of our computer monitor we never used until the pandemic. Everybody was on Zoom, and now we got team meetings and Microsoft, and so everybody's pivoting to the technology. And now with technology, everybody's working from home, but not everybody's home computer is secure enough like it was in the corporate office. So that's another area that had to be addressed as far as cybersecurity. But as far as my industry, which is payroll, a big trend that is influencing the employee experience is the 4-day work week. It's coming. Just like payroll on demand. If you get paid every 2 weeks, and a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and you need an advance on the last week's hours, you can get an advance up to $200. That technology, the banking technology, it's advancing so rapidly that it's affecting everybody's perception and adjustments in the hybrid model. Where are you working? How are they tracking your time? How are you getting paid? And are you happy? Especially if your paycheck's there when it's supposed to be. But so the hybrid model, I think, it encompasses a lot of different areas.
I mean, technology touches everything, everything touches it, and that's what you're pointing out, right?
Yep.
And then are you happy? How many of you are doing did the Qualtrics engagement surveys and remote pulse surveys throughout the pandemic to keep checking in on people, right? And that's consumable wherever. Like you said, we're connected 24/7. So when we say work from home, right, is it really work from home? It's just not us. It's working remotely, whether it's in your headspace, whether it's or in my car, because that's where a lot of the calls take place, right? If I have my device on, I can pull over anywhere and hit the button and camera, or not hit the camera and say, I'm in transit, but I can answer every question you have, and I'm driving hands-free, but I'm still in the meeting, right? And before that was unheard of, right? But everything has been so technologically integrated. I can pull my payroll, I can send a remote post survey to check on engagement, leadership trust. I can host a meeting. I can call my kids' school. Like, you know, you can do everything from your hand, the palm of your hand, right? I don't need a laptop, really. It depends on what I'm doing. I don't need necessarily the iPad, right? I just need some sort of mobile device that is going to help me hit my portal, hit my banking, hit my employee. You know, I can send a Teams chat, and you don't even have to know I'm sitting over here, right? Like, in all honesty, right? We had a lot of people move during the pandemic. I thought you was in Arizona. Oh no, we moved to Charleston, South Carolina. And that has payroll implications and tax implications. But people did that. We have people move countries and have to relocate and become on SAP Dublin's books instead of SAP America, or leave the company because of different, you know, tax laws. It's like, so it's amazing, you know, and people have for a long time not wanting to get on board with some of the technology, and the pandemic forced it. And once it forced it, it's not going fast. So it behooves us to understand it's not about should you or shouldn't you, it's how quickly can you? What could, should have, would have done, did it now. And put it into place, because if not, you won't be able to actually do business well without the use of technology. Whether you're in pharmaceutical, whether you're in technology, whether you're in education, you know, go get surgery, good luck, without having some sort of integrated technology being used where you can't even get your doctor. We were talking about a prescription anymore. They'll call the pharmacy. They're right there, okay, it's ready. So anyway, the digital era is here to stay, and I think you have to recognize it, embrace it, implement it as quickly as possible, because it's an efficiency. In many cases, it's a cost saving, right? And it definitely broadened and expands your reach.
I couldn't agree, and I think we've got some time for some Q&A, so appreciate you kicking us off. Are there any questions for our panelists around any of the topics you've heard, technology, productivity? We've heard a lot, so open it up.
Well, I just want to share my experience. I was a small business, small teams, but then just like I said, the team is somehow covering the inefficiencies of others. It's not evident. So, whoa, that's somebody thinking of so. So you observed it as well. So you can take whatever action you need. But the other side of the coin was behavior change. Now, I think I'll make a blanket statement that as we age, our inclination to change. And I found that I had to change and go electronic and digital. And then over the period of the couple of years that we were stuck. So they didn't need to come to the office to record any documents. So there was a lot of positive behavior change, which really created productivity improvements. And now we're trying to bring that same thing, using the same tool set that everybody uses.
Oh, yeah. Like you were saying, if people are in the office all together, maybe one team member was picking up the slack for somebody else, right? So when everybody's home alone in their own houses, they're working on their own. I mean, you're still part of the team, but it became very obvious in certain areas where you have a star employee who was just working nonstop and they're, even more productive. And others, you were able to see that maybe they weren't as productive. So yeah, that absolutely came out. And like you said, technology is everywhere, digital is everywhere. We had to go from really not being completely digital at the university to everybody being digital the next day. And the employees were, on one hand, the easier part, because we had to use computers and things like that. We had to get everybody a laptop, and everybody had laptops. For a little while, we let people use their own laptops, depending on what job they were doing. But thank God we had a security officer in IT, and they set up guidelines and made sure everything was secure. But then we said over time, I think we gave the departments a year to budget out to replace anybody using their own personal computer with a company computer, so that we can be sure of the security, and that was a big issue. But I think our biggest problem was professors. It was a medical college, so there were a lot of people who were doctors for many, many years who were now teaching, and they were not great at technology. So, a lot of the employees already had laptops and had remote access. None of the professors. We weren't one of those schools that had online classes. You come in and you become a doctor. So that was a big change, setting up for all the online virtual classes. Our poor IT people just, constantly having to help and have them get in the habit of, they never use Zoom. You have to teach them how to use Zoom and how to do all of that, and that was really hard. But like we said, it's here to stay. And now, I don't think any office has an actual PC in it. They're all a laptop. You come in and you look it up. Even if you're in the office every day, it's not a laptop, because next week we could all shut down again. That's good time. But it's a possibility. So you have to build your business knowing that's a possibility. You don't want to go back, but you want to be able to switch on the dime.
One question would be with the hybrid model, and I think we're all at that point where people are working from home at least one day a week, most people too. But how do we really balance work and life? Because now that we are so tech heavy, I might go to bed and be like, oh, my first meeting's not till 9:30, and I wake up and somebody has already put a meeting on my calendar at 8 a.m. And they've taken the 15-minute block I have at lunch. And, people, when you used to see blocks, it was like, oh, they're in the car, I'll give them time. People don't really care about what your schedule looks like anymore.
So what I tend to do is on a Sunday, look at my week and try to find, it doesn't always work, but try to find places to block the blocks and make an appointment with myself. And I call it private, or I call it lunch, or I call it whatever, because you do have to be cognizant of the fact that I have to physically get up and move. I may need to eat. I may need to take a bite of bread. I may need to. So my commute time is still my commute time. And I will block my calendar if we're closed. So it definitely happens where people put in meetings at different times. But I have my calendar blocked every morning from 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. And I might work out. I might drive my child to school one day, be nice to her on a bus. I may do anything I want to do. And if there are times when somebody says, hey, I really need to talk to you at 8 a.m. Is this, available? Sure, I'm going to be flexible, but it's not going to be every day. Now, I didn't get to eat lunch today because I went to the office and I had back-to-back meetings all day, plus people called me in. So I didn't do a good job at it today, but I I did have to drive in, so I had that time. So I would say make appointments with yourself, right? Check in on your calendar. There are days that are just non-negotiable for me. I'm a team ministry leader on Wednesday nights. I don't really care what time zone you're in. You can't touch my calendar after 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. It's locked. It is locked, and it's a hard lock, and it's an out of office block. And so people don't tend to bother those spaces. People saw technology as a replacement of individuals. And what we learned is that, no, you need us even more to monitor and manage what's happening with the technology, to design and shape the implementation of the technology, to correct and mitigate the bias that's implicit in the technology. So one isn't over the other. It's not an either or, it's a yes and. And so with that, scheduling and calendaring and all of that comes into play. And so you literally have to schedule time with yourself, especially if you don't have like an assistant or something, to make that you know, not every day will it work, but for the days that it can, and it does, for sure. Because that's a real thing, that you wake up and, well, guess what? If it wasn't on my calendar 48 hours in advance, it's a chance that it may not happen. Just if you want it to be there, it doesn't mean it's gonna happen. And I'm definitely flexible. But I will say, decline and propose a new time. It's a request for a meeting. It's not a mandate for my time. And that protects my psychological safety. I oftentimes tell people, if I don't go to the gym or church, we all in trouble. So it behooves everybody that at least have some time here and there where I block it out. You may not know that's what it is, right? If I say I can't come on camera, trust me, you don't want to see me because I'm likely multitasking, working out or something. Well, but you can hear me, right? So that's a little bit of, I don't know, maybe how do you all manage it?
So we, in human resources, we definitely encourage the employees to think about that and to block off time for themselves. Because it ended up being back-to-back meetings for a while now. Yeah, it still is, but you know, if human resources is encouraging it and the higher ups are encouraging it, then it's more accepted. So, but you definitely have to think about yourself. You know, if you're not at your best, then you're not your best. So, a coworker started using the calendar, and you know, then people could just put the time right on your calendar. And she was really careful to put in focus time. And I think it showed up as private, so you can really see what it was, but it blocked out the time so that she had time to actually do work. But you have to do that ahead of time, or else you're going to wake up and there's going to be a meeting on your
But again, they're called meeting requests.
That's true. That's true.
No, proposing time.
I have a small business that helps other small businesses with IT services. So we had a lot of our clients basically do the whole essentially flexible work and things. So we have to help them. One of the challenges that we ran into something we didn't have adequate internet access. Yeah, most of them did have either cable or files and things like that, but the signal wasn't good enough for video conferencing. So we went out and launched to help our users with some of those issues. Some of them wanted their office phones in their home offices, and that was a little bit of a challenge because they required internet connection. So we built a lot of that stuff in the one of the things that I'm always curious on is I felt that being in person in the meeting room meant that you could see that person. And when I'm in meetings on Zoom or Teams or whatever, half the cameras are turned off. I'm just wondering whether that's just inability to have a camera on or not wanting to have a camera. Because I think this that face-to-face people given for sure. I mean, that face-to-face is always wondering about whether it's just preference-wise or whether they don't have technology.
You'd be surprised that sometimes it's the leader on the call, whatever they do, that everybody will follow. And then sometimes it's literally putting up ground rules, like a slide at the start of it. This is ground rules. Like, we request that you turn your camera on, like, use the virtual hand, just little things so that we're not talking to each other. And then people will do it. Sometimes if I come on and somebody else is already on, even if they're not the lead, it might be my call, but they beat me there because I was on another call. If I come on and they're on video, a lot of times I will start. I do try to stay video ready. And in my home office, which is in the basement of my house, I sit here in front of the laptop. And over here in the chair is a bunch of different lasers.
Ready to go.
Yes, and over here is makeup. And I've got two different types of ring lights. I've got a big one and this one. And so I remain flexible because there are times where I may not think I have to be on camera and I get on everybody's on camera. Our global colleagues tend to really like to be on camera. And so I'm ready. And so I actually might have on gym clothes. But once I put my blazer over it and I've got my makeup on already, good morning, how are you? And I might be, I've been panting 10 seconds before that. So you do have to remain flexible, but to the question of, some people, it is a preference. Some people, if they're not comfortable with using virtual backgrounds, they don't want you to see into their home. I've got every virtual background out there. And that's something I made a point of doing. We have some that are SAP branded, and they look like our different offices. I have taken pictures at our SAP offices and uploaded them and use them as my background. They're great 3D. You can Google 3D Zoom background and you upload that image. Like, where are you? Like, in my house. And where do I want to be today? Well, I'm doing YouTube. And so you just change it. And it actually, for me, sometimes changes my mood because I feel like I'm experiencing, you have video, motion runs, they move behind you. And so I think sometimes when people aren't comfortable doing that, they don't want you to actually see into their home for whatever reason, right? They'll tend to not go on camera. They don't the blur. Some people like the blur, some people don't. If it's too flat of a background, my head goes in the mountains. You look crazy.
We actually, it's funny, we actually taught social media etiquette and video etiquette, right? If you think about it from a professionalism, something we didn't maybe think about or we talked about it, but we didn't teach it. So every new hire would go through it. Everybody that started and was with the company for 16 years would go through it because we had to represent and humanize our interactions. And that's one thing that we lost. I missed it. And my team knows I've been on video since, and to this day on video every single day. That's one of the ground rules we set. Hey, we don't get to have eye contact that often, even when we're on video. If you think about it, you're never really having eye contact with somebody. So it's important. And I think that's one of the things that we did in our organization.
Did you teach them where to look?
Yes.
People don't know where to look.
No.
Look at the camera.
She look at the camera. But that's where you think about it, you lose eye contact. You humanize somebody. That's a good question.
I think, the conversation is like, it's two different schools of thought, and there's a bigger corporate atmosphere, and what work hybrid and remote mean. And then there's a small business community, and people that are working remotely at home, I just feel connected that they have something to rely on, because network security obviously is a big thing, where people are accessing the internet from, and how can they make that? Because there are ways for small businesses to, be on top of that. And I think having that confidence really, should be sought out because it's important, as far as business goes. Productivity, suite management, there's people in offices, where you have people to turn to, so if you have a problem with Zoom, you have a problem with, the different, things that are available to you. It's nice to have somebody to rely on, because when you're small business community, what that means, where, what am I going to do? So I think somebody to work alongside you in that respect, I think is beneficial. And then you can have conversations with the bigger standpoint, corporate standpoint, where you can do it. You have that confidence, and you call somebody or somebody's working in your office that you know about. But two different, hearing two different conversations, how what it means to people. I think, how you should have that confidence. You should be able to have those resources available. They are.
And I've seen some of our small businesses, at minimum, you have Microsoft a lot of times in the small business, not all of them, but they have the Teams chat that they're using a lot more than they thought they would, because that's kind of how they feel like they're connecting on the fly with each other and getting support when needed. And it's a Teams chat, and you hit the button and call right then, or whatever. But I mean, it definitely sounds like it can be challenging, and that's just something that I know in our SMB businesses that they talk about, just using what they do have, right? They know what they don't have and have to overcome, but using what they do have to stay connected and feel like they've not lost everything. And that's where also having the office open and the flexibility to come in as much or as little as you like, that goes a long way too. Because now we can all say we feel the same thing. It's that gap that's there. And even in a small business setting, we feel the same
It's
thing.
nice to feel that immediacy too, you know, if something goes wrong or you can't figure something out.
True.
You know, you're not just sitting there Googling or trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
But I have an interesting observation on that because I'm working with small businesses. Well, I'm working with our corporate clients, they have no problems picking the phone up or sending a message to get out. Small businesses, you know, we told them, send us a Teams message, here's how you do it, we respond right away. Wouldn't do it. They have problems, you just sit on it.
Yeah.
But, so, yeah, you know, the issue is the schools are there, we're teaching them how to use the tools. They're refusing to use the tools. I don't know what the solution is. They don't have that problem.
They like have their handheld too. I think, you know, if you realize they have that option, you know, they have somebody to call. They need somebody to walk them through.
Yeah.
They're not gonna, you know, I think immediately, you know, volunteer themselves to say, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right, because that's a discomfort, right?
Yeah.
And we have to move away from the either or and understand it's yes and. Yes, you provided them the tools, and if you pop in once a week, they love to see you, right? Like something
That's
where,
what it is.
you know what I mean? Like,
That's right.
yeah.
It's great questions, great dialogue, and I think we're gonna also have some more over some great beverages. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? I want to say thank you to our panelists.
I'd like to say one more thing about the hybrid experience. There's, I don't know how many people in this room have an employee manual, but a lot of these things we're talking about should be in the manual so that when there's a disciplinary action that has to be taken, especially with workers' compensation and unemployment compensation, that it's in writing, that you can protect yourself as a small business. So, well, we were doing it this way, but the policy is this, and it's in writing, and you signed it. So, how do you protect yourself as a business? So, hybrid does involve HR, knowing what the policy is. There's a culture with small businesses, and any business, the employee manual policy.
Right.
Accountability.
Yeah.
And so everything's switched on a dime. So you didn't have time to change the policies, but we definitely had a new work from home hybrid policy in place before we reopened and then allow the hybrid schedule. But you know, when it was, you know, March of 2020, everybody get home from work. There was no policy for that, but we definitely put that into place and came up with a policy and what was allowed, what wasn't allowed, and if you had an exception to work more than just 2 days at home, you actually had to send in pictures of your workspace. And so we definitely put that into place so that it was there, but it wasn't there right away.
And the way we handled it was, we didn't really challenge what we were doing, but we actually called you in versus out. So we said, hey, this month we're gonna celebrate the pets at home. Let's see what your workforce looks like. Like we did different things with the kids. We had different ways of asking employees to engage, but at the same time, it helped us to see what was happening and how it was happening. The point of what's policy and what's not, it became what's a recommendation or practice, right? Versus what's an actual policy. And things that are actual policies, you actually have to go online in our success factors and do it and sign off on it digitally and get a certification. And if you don't, the system pings you every day until you do. And I know that because I'm guilty of that. I was trying to do them. And I'm like, they're like, you're 28 days overdue. And so those kinds of things are definitely important. And last thing I would like to say is, whether you're a small business or a corporation, big corporation, think about the best of the best when you were always in the office and bring that back. And so maybe people aren't in the office every day, whether it's twice a week, 3 days a week, whatever it is. Make sure you incorporate those opportunities for people to come in and appreciate each other. You know, whether it's a pep rally because the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl, right? Or whether it's a, you know, recognition day for everybody in a service date. it could be something customer facing, it could be a volunteer event, right? So something community service oriented. It could be something with your resource groups if you have them. Just whatever you enjoyed the most about what you did originally, bring some of those things back, and that'll be reason enough to come in to the office at a frequency that makes a difference. I think that goes a long way. It helps with engagement, trust scores, all those sorts of things. You see yourself embedded in what the company is.
Well, appreciate everyone showing up. Appreciate my panelists, and looking forward to continued conversation for the happy hour. So thank you all for showing up. If you have any questions, I'm sure our panelists can hang around for a couple minutes.